Ever wondered what happens when you mess with someone who seems quiet, gentle, and almost too nice for their own good? Well, if that person happens to be an INFJ, you might be in for a surprise that'll leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about human nature. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of the INFJ personality type, those rare individuals who make up less than 2% of the population. They're often called the advocates or the counselors, and while they might seem like easy targets for manipulation or mistreatment, the reality couldn't be further from the truth. If you've ever tried to hurt, manipulate, or take advantage of an INFJ, you've probably discovered that it didn't go quite as planned. In fact, it might have backfired spectacularly. But why does this happen? What makes INFJs so uniquely equipped to turn the tables on those who try to harm them? Stick around because we're about to uncover 12 compelling reasons why targeting an INFJ is essentially like bringing a water gun to a laser fight. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll have a whole new level of respect for these quiet powerhouses. 1. They're master observers who see right through your act. INFJs possess what psychologists call dominant introverted intuition, which basically means they're constantly collecting information about people and situations, even when they seem completely absorbed in their own thoughts. While you're busy planning your next move against them, they've already figured out your entire playbook. These individuals have spent their entire lives watching human behavior unfold like a complex chess game. They notice the subtle changes in your tone when you're lying, the way your body language shifts when you're uncomfortable, and the patterns in your behavior that even you aren't aware of. It's not that they're psychic, they're just incredibly tuned into the human experience. When someone tries to manipulate or hurt an INFJ, they're often shocked to discover that their target has been 3 steps ahead the entire time. INFJs don't just see what you're doing, they understand why you're doing it, what emotional wounds are driving your behavior, and exactly how your actions will likely play out in the long run. This observational superpower means that any attempt to deceive or manipulate an INFJ is likely to be spotted immediately. They might not call you out right away. INFJs tend to give people the benefit of the doubt, but they're definitely taking notes. And when they finally decide to act on what they've observed, the results can be devastating for the person who underestimated them. 2. Their emotional intelligence is off the charts. If you think INFJs are just sensitive people who cry at commercials, you're missing the bigger picture. Yes, they feel deeply, but that emotional depth comes with a level of emotional intelligence that can be absolutely overwhelming for those who try to use emotions as weapons against them. INFJs understand emotions, not just their own, but everyone else's too. They can read the emotional undertones in a conversation that others completely miss. They know when someone's anger is really fear in disguise, when aggression is masking insecurity, and when cruelty is actually a cry for help. This means that when someone tries to emotionally manipulate an INFJ, they're essentially trying to use a tool that the INFJ understands better than they do. It's like trying to beat a professional musician in a battle of the bands when you can barely play chopsticks on the piano. More importantly, INFJs can use this emotional intelligence defensively and strategically. They know exactly which emotional buttons to push to neutralize a threat, and they understand how to communicate in ways that expose the truth of a situation. When an INFJ decides to fight back emotionally, they don't just aim for your feelings. They aim for the core beliefs and insecurities that drive your behavior. 3. They have an uncanny ability to predict consequences. One of the most underestimated aspects of the INFJ personality is their ability to see how current actions will play out in the future. This isn't fortune-telling, it's pattern recognition combined with a deep understanding of human nature and cause and effect relationships. When someone tries to hurt an INFJ, they're often thinking in the short term. They want immediate satisfaction, quick revenge, or instant gratification from their harmful actions. But INFJs are playing a completely different game. They're thinking about how your actions will affect your reputation, your relationships, your career, and your personal growth over months and years. This long-term thinking gives them a massive strategic advantage. While their attacker is focused on winning the battle, the INFJ is already mapping out how to win the entire war. They understand that sometimes the best response to aggression is patience, because they can see how the aggressor's own actions will eventually lead to their downfall. INFJs often don't need to actively retaliate against someone who's hurt them. They simply need to step back and let natural consequences unfold. They know that people who consistently hurt others eventually isolate themselves, damage their own credibility, and create enemies where they could have had allies. For they remember everything, and I mean everything. If you've ever dealt with an INFJ, you might have noticed their almost supernatural memory for emotional events and interpersonal interactions. This isn't just good recall, it's a comprehensive database of human behavior that they've been building their entire lives. When someone hurts an INFJ, they're not just dealing with that single incident. They're being filed away in a mental catalog that includes every other time they've been inconsistent, unkind, or dishonest. INFJs remember not just what you did, but the context in which you did it, how it made others feel, and how it fits into the larger pattern of your character. This phenomenal memory serves multiple purposes in their self-defense arsenal. First, it makes them incredibly difficult to gaslight or manipulate through lies about past events. Second, it allows them to spot recurring patterns in behavior that others might miss. Third, it gives them the ammunition they need if they ever decide to expose someone's true character to others. The scary part for those who try to hurt INFJs is that this memory often extends far beyond the personal relationship. They remember how you treated the waitress, what you said about your ex-partner, and how you behaved when you thought nobody important was watching. When an INFJ decides to defend themselves, they have a complete dossier of your character, not just isolated incidents. 5. Their network is deeper than you think. INFJs might seem like loners, but this perception is misleading. While they have fewer relationships than extroverted types, the relationships they do have tend to be incredibly deep, meaningful, and built on mutual respect and trust. When someone tries to hurt an INFJ, they often assume they're targeting an isolated individual with little social support. This is a dangerous miscalculation. INFJs typically have a small but mighty network of people who genuinely care about them and respect their judgment. These aren't casual acquaintances or fair-weather friends. These are people who have experienced the INFJ's loyalty, wisdom, and genuine care firsthand. When an INFJ is hurt by someone, their support network doesn't just offer sympathy, they often spring into action. Moreover, INFJs tend to attract other strong, principled individuals to their circle. Their friends are often successful, influential, and have their own networks of connections. Attacking an INFJ can sometimes be like kicking a hornet's nest. You might think you're dealing with one person, but you're actually taking on an entire ecosystem of people who value integrity and loyalty. 6. They can cut you off completely, the famous door slam. One of the most powerful weapons in an INFJ's defensive arsenal is something that's become known in personality psychology circles as the door slam. This isn't a dramatic confrontation or a heated argument. It's the complete and total removal of someone from their life, as if that person simply ceased to exist. The door slam is particularly devastating because it usually comes after a long period of patience and forgiveness. INFJs give people multiple chances, make excuses for their behavior, and try to see the good in everyone. But once they decide that someone is genuinely harmful and unlikely to change, they don't just end the relationship, they obliterate it. This isn't done out of spite or revenge. For the INFJ, it's a matter of self-preservation and energy management. They recognize that continuing to engage with toxic people is draining their ability to help and support the people who truly deserve it. The power of the door slam lies in its finality. There's no negotiation, no second chances, and no possibility of reconciliation. For people who are used to being able to manipulate their way back into someone's good graces, this absolute boundary can be shocking and extremely uncomfortable. 7. They document everything like a professional investigator. When an INFJ feels threatened or mistreated, they often shift into what could be called documentation mode. They start keeping detailed records of interactions, saving screenshots of conversations, and maintaining careful notes about incidents and behaviors. This habit might seem obsessive to others, but for INFJs, it's a practical form of self-protection. They understand that manipulative people often rely on others forgetting the details of what happened, or being able to twist the narrative in their favor later on. By documenting everything, INFJs create an objective record that can't be disputed or manipulated. If someone tries to gaslight them by claiming a conversation never happened, they can produce the exact messages. If someone tries to deny their behavior, they have specific dates, times, and witnesses to reference. This documentation also serves another purpose. It helps the INFJ see patterns in behavior that might not be obvious from individual incidents. When they can look back at months or years of interactions, they can identify cycles of manipulation, periods of escalation, and the specific triggers that seem to set off problematic behavior in others. 8. They have an almost supernatural ability to expose hypocrisy. INFJs are naturally drawn to authenticity and consistency. They value people who align their actions with their stated values, and they're extremely sensitive to hypocrisy in all its forms. This makes them particularly effective at exposing people who say one thing but do another. When someone tries to hurt an INFJ, they often do so while maintaining a public image of being a good, moral person. They might be pillars of their community, respected professionals, or popular social figures. But INFJs see through these facades and understand the difference between public persona and private character. The INFJ's ability to expose hypocrisy isn't usually dramatic or confrontational. Instead, they tend to ask simple, direct questions that force hypocrites to confront the contradictions in their own behavior. They might point out inconsistencies in someone's story, highlight the gap between their words and actions, or simply refuse to participate in the pretense that someone is different than they actually are. This skill becomes particularly powerful in group settings, where the INFJ can illuminate someone's true character for others to see. They don't usually need to make accusations or dramatic claims. They simply create situations where the person's own words and actions speak for themselves. 9. Their calm response reveals the aggressor's true nature. One of the most frustrating things for people who try to provoke or hurt INFJs is their typical response: measured calm. INFJs don't usually react to aggression with more aggression, emotional outbursts, or dramatic confrontations. Instead, they respond with a level of composure that can be both impressive and infuriating to their attackers. This calm response serves multiple strategic purposes. First, it prevents the situation from escalating in ways that might be harmful to everyone involved. Second, it forces the aggressor to reveal their true nature without the excuse of being provoked or responding to someone else's bad behavior. When someone is trying to hurt an INFJ and is met with calm, reasonable responses, they often escalate their behavior in frustration. This escalation reveals their true character to anyone who's watching, and it creates a clear contrast between their aggressive behavior and the INFJ's measured response. The aggressor often ends up looking unstable, unreasonable, or cruel, while the INFJ appears mature, professional, and unflappable. This dynamic can be particularly powerful in workplace settings, family situations, or social groups where others are observing the interaction. 10. They turn your attack into a learning experience. INFJs have a unique ability to transform negative experiences into opportunities for growth and understanding. When someone hurts them, they don't just feel the pain. They analyze it, learn from it, and use it to become more resilient and wise. This process often involves understanding not just what happened, but why it happened. INFJs try to understand the psychological and emotional factors that led someone to hurt them. They explore their own role in the situation, identify any vulnerabilities that were exploited, and develop strategies to protect themselves in the future. For the person who hurt them, this can be incredibly frustrating. Instead of being destroyed or permanently damaged by the attack, the INFJ emerges stronger, wiser, and more capable. The intended harm becomes a source of growth and empowerment. Moreover, INFJs often share their insights and experiences with others, helping their friends and family members recognize and avoid similar situations. The harm that was intended to destroy one person instead becomes wisdom that protects many people. 11. They can rally others to their cause without asking. INFJs have a rare quality that makes people want to protect and support them even without being asked for help. This happens because of their genuine nature, their history of helping others, and the respect they've earned through their consistent character and actions. When word gets out that someone has hurt an INFJ, their friends, family members, and colleagues often feel personally offended. These people have experienced the INFJ's kindness, wisdom, and support firsthand, and they can't understand why anyone would want to harm such a genuinely good person. This protective response from others can create significant social consequences for the person who hurt the INFJ. They might find themselves excluded from social groups, passed over for opportunities, or facing a general atmosphere of disapproval from people they need to maintain relationships with. The INFJ doesn't usually orchestrate this response. It happens naturally because of the relationships they've built and the reputation they've earned. People simply don't want to associate with someone who would harm a person they respect and care about. 12. They have the patience to wait for perfect timing. Perhaps the most underestimated aspect of INFJs is their incredible patience when it comes to dealing with people who have hurt them. They don't feel the need to respond immediately to every slight or attack. Instead, they're willing to wait for the perfect moment to address the situation in the most effective way possible. This patience allows them to respond strategically rather than emotionally. They can wait for the moment when their response will have the maximum impact, when they have the strongest position, and when the truth will be most clearly visible to others. Sometimes this means waiting for the aggressor to reveal their true nature to others through their own actions. Sometimes it means waiting for a moment when they can address the situation privately and effectively. Sometimes it means waiting for the person to mature enough to understand the harm they've caused. The power of this patience is that it allows the INFJ to respond from a position of strength rather than weakness. They're not reacting impulsively or defensively, they're choosing the time, place, and method of their response based on what will be most effective for everyone involved. The reality check. Why this matters? Understanding these 12 reasons isn't about encouraging conflict or celebrating anyone's ability to hurt others. Instead, it's about recognizing that people who seem gentle and accommodating aren't necessarily vulnerable or easy targets. INFJs, like many personality types, have developed sophisticated defense mechanisms based on their unique strengths and abilities. Their approach to dealing with harm is often more subtle and strategic than the direct confrontation that other types might prefer, but it's no less effective. For people who might be tempted to take advantage of someone's kindness or perceived weakness, these insights serve as an important reminder that actions have consequences, and those consequences might be more far-reaching than initially anticipated. For INFJs themselves, understanding these natural abilities can be empowering. Many INFJs underestimate their own strength and resilience, focusing instead on their sensitivity and desire for harmony. Recognizing these defensive capabilities can help them feel more confident in their ability to protect themselves and maintain their boundaries. Conclusion: the idea that trying to hurt an INFJ will backfire isn't about revenge or retaliation. It's about the natural consequences of targeting someone who possesses a unique combination of emotional intelligence, strategic thinking, excellent memory, and genuine relationships with others. INFJs don't typically set out to harm anyone, even those who have hurt them. Instead, they protect themselves through boundaries, documentation, strategic patience, and the natural support system they've built through years of authentic relationships and consistent character. The backfire effect happens not because INFJs are vindictive or manipulative, but because they're exceptionally skilled at seeing truth, maintaining their integrity, and responding to situations in ways that ultimately expose the real character of everyone involved. If you're dealing with conflict involving an INFJ, the best approach is always honesty, respect, and genuine communication. These individuals respond well to authenticity and are often willing to work through problems when they believe the other person is acting in good faith. But if you're thinking about trying to manipulate, deceive, or deliberately hurt an INFJ, you might want to reconsider. You're not just taking on one person, you're challenging someone with extraordinary insight into human nature, the patience to wait for the right moment to respond, and the kind of authentic relationships that create natural consequences for those who harm good people. The harsh truth is simple. INFJs might seem like easy targets, but they're actually some of the most formidable people you could ever choose to cross. Not because they're cruel or vindictive, but because they're exceptionally skilled at protecting themselves and others through wisdom, patience, and an unshakable commitment to truth and authenticity. Remember, the goal should never be to hurt anyone, regardless of their personality type. Instead, let's focus on building genuine relationships based on mutual respect, understanding, and authentic communication. That's our approach that benefits everyone, creates stronger communities, and leads to the kind of meaningful connections that make life truly worthwhile.